Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat Top 10. My name is George Coles. This is my tag team partner, Tracy Smothers.
Wild-eyed Southern boy, huh?
There you go.
God. And Gary Rhodes, everybody. And what?
The topic for the top 10 this week is the top 10 ECW wrestlers. And I'm going to go ahead and let you start it off, Gary.
Alright. Number 10's coming in at a former WWF superstar that never really got the push he deserved, so they sent him down to ECW, and he made a better name for himself than he ever could have in WWF. Just incredible.
Yeah, I thought he was really good. He was an impact player, pardon the pun. He's a guy that was a world champion in ECW, a tag team champion.
He's not just what?
He's not just the coolest. He's not just the greatest. He's just incredible. And
I'll let you do my gimmick.
that was part of the thing.
I know. I'll let you do my gimmick. I'll give it to you.
What? Anyway, Justin, I think he had one of the best tombstone pile drivers. He called it "That's Incredible," the spinning tombstone. He was a guy. His gimmick was kind of a FU ECW kind of gimmick, and it worked. Him and Lance did really well. Lance Storm as a team, and him on his own even did well.
Oh yeah. I honestly thought he would go farther than what he did, but I mean, you never know with politics and things like that, personal problems.
I think drug addictions hurt him, and I think who he was friends with kind of hurt him at times too. Now our number 9 guy is a guy that even the dude on my shirt says there would be no ECW without, and that's
True.
The hardcore legend, middle-aged and crazy Terry Funk.
Jimmy Jack Funk?
Shut your mouth.
Everybody's got a price.
But the man from Amarillo, Texas, he was a guy that in the very early stages of ECW, he came in and gave them world championship credibility. He's a guy that's a former NWA champion multiple times. He's been in main events on Starrcade. He's been in WrestleMania. He's a guy that everybody knew, and he's a guy that was hardcore before there was hardcore.
Well, like you said, with Paul Heyman saying there would probably have been no ECW without Terry Funk, it's true. Terry Funk gave ECW, a small promotion at that time, a giant rub to have a credible legend, being associated with him. And the matches he put on for a guy that was in his 40s, 50s,
50s at that time.
The triple threat with him, Shane Douglas, and Sabu, awesome match.
And the Born to Be Wired, him versus Sabu in a barbed wire match, is one of the most brutal matches I've ever seen. And this, at the time, I think he was 53, 54-year-old man, willing to rip his body to shreds for, like you said, a little promotion. It was the third biggest promotion at the time. And it just goes to show that someone that's willing to give into the business and give back to a business that gave them so much.
Well, the thing was with Terry that I liked about him, he wasn't out like a lot of these older guys, the old timers, to make themselves look good. Paul Heyman said it best himself. He would look at a young superstar and go, I can make him, or I can do something with him. He wasn't worried about himself, and that's one thing you've got to have a ton of respect for Terry Funk. Because I've never heard anybody ever say a cross word about the guy.
No, if they did, he would have hit him with the branding iron.
I'm going to hit you with the branding iron. Anyways, we're going on to number 8. Probably at one point the face of ECW, in a lot of people's opinion, RVD.
The whole fucking show. Mr. Pay-Per-View, Mr. Monday Night, Rob Van Dam.
Do your spin kick.
Yeah, it ain't happening.
Rob Van Dam, in his prime in ECW, was probably one of the most innovative wrestlers of all time. I can't think of too many guys that could keep up with him. And when he had matches with guys that were great quality and great at the caliber of him, the matches were awesome.
Awesome.
No, we don't want to talk about that.
Now RVD, he was a tag team champion and a television champion. His television run, he made the television championship as important as a world championship when it was supposed to be a secondary belt. And kudos to Rob. I mean, he, like you said, he was very revolutionary. There was stuff that Rob Van Dam was doing that no one else was doing then, and still people are struggling to do now.
Yeah, you look at him.
The Van Terminator, which they call the Coast to Coast now, was the first time I seen that. It blew my mind that someone could jump from one corner to the other.
Well, I mean, you look at it now. He's wrestling for TNA, and when he's on all firing all 8 cylinders, the young guys still can't keep up with him.
And he was. I think he was absolutely perfect for the time. I think his talents were used to the best of his abilities in ECW. I don't think anybody's used him right since then. And I really, Rob Van Dam's definitely one of my all-time favorites. Now going from Rob to another one of my all-time favorites, a guy that's the heart and soul, the backbone of ECW, Tommy Dreamer. The ultimate face in ECW. I mean, there was nothing he could do that would make him a heel. He fought every one of the heels in the company. He's a guy that came in to ECW and the fans hated him. He came in wearing green spandex with suspenders, was a total face. The fans hated him, and then his character evolved to a point where he was arguably the most beloved character in the history of ECW.
Well, we're going to go to one of the most...
You're going to skip over? You're not going to say nothing about Tommy?
I like Tommy. I'm sorry. I thought you were done with him. Tommy, to me, like I said, he was their ultimate face.
Yeah.
I loved his feud with Raven. To me, probably one of the best feuds of all time.
I would definitely agree. And he had also great feuds with guys like the Dudley Boyz, Sandman, Shane Douglas. I mean, the list goes on and on. Just Incredible. He's one of the guys that helped make Just Incredible into a main eventer in ECW.
Now, on to another man there that was probably, when you think of his name, you think of ECW, the Sandman. You know,
the greatest entrance in the history of wrestling.
Yes, I figured you'd say that. I mean, he was one of the first guys before Austin that would flip the bird and drink beers in the ring and stuff like that. And smoke. You know, I mean, he was your ultimate Joe Everybody.
He was, basically, his gimmick was he was a guy that walked out of the bar and into the wrestling ring. And 90% of the time, he literally walked from the bar to the wrestling ring. And he connected with the crowd, the crowd connected with Sandman like almost nobody else I've ever seen. His entrance alone sold pay-per-views. I mean, he would come through the crowd, they'd play Enter Sandman by Metallica, and the whole crowd would sing along with him. It's giving me goosebumps right now thinking about how awesome that was. Sandman wasn't ever the most technically proficient wrestler. He was a brawler, nothing more, nothing less. The drunker he was, the worse his matches were. But the whole aura of him, he was almost ECW's Undertaker. As a matter of fact, he was ECW's Undertaker.
I'll give you that one. Undertaker was the guy with their WWE's entrance, and he was with their entrance. His entrance would overshadow the matches most of the time.
Yeah, and a lot of times it was longer.
Yeah.
And now our number 5 guy is a guy that was the face of ECW at one point, and a guy that embodied ECW's attitude. He never had the size, he never really had to build, but he was someone that went to the main event just on his drive, and that's Tazz, the human suplex machine. He came in as the Tazz Maniac, as a crappy, horrible gimmick. Basically was a tag team wrestler with Sabu, with Kevin Sullivan, and then he morphed himself into Tazz. Would you say he was the first to bring the UFC style into wrestling?
Oh, of course.
Because he predated when Shamrock and Severn had came in. He predated that by at least a year. He was the first guy that I seen use the tap out in pro wrestling, which is now standard. People, used to be you had to do the
exactly. Well, the one thing about Tazz that really his character really progressed was when Paul Heyman made him talk.
Yeah.
Because remember, he never really talked before, and then when he was hurt, he was calling. I can't remember what show he was calling.
It was calling a match between Eddie Guerrero and Dean Malenko, and they never said his name till the end of the match. They did a shot of him and Joey Styles. The first time anyone talked with Joey Styles, and he said, the guy that's been calling this match, it came panned in on Joey. The guy that's been calling this match, the camera fades out, is named Pete Sinertia, but you know him better as Tazz.
And, the evolution of Tazz being one of the greatest talkers of all time, we were just talking about that because he recently joined the Aces and Eights in TNA. And I forgot how good of a talker he was when he first started talking.
Exactly.
Now on to, not a singles competitor, we're talking about the best damn tag team ever. As this man here next to me would say, the Dudley Boyz.
What number are they, GR?
Number 4. But Woo! Number 1 in your heart. There you go. I was waiting for you to do that. I'll give you a little segue. But anyways, these guys would incite riots wherever they went. These guys brought the passion to the ring. You know, they really got the crowd involved. If you really look at any of their old ECW matches, they were ahead of their time decades.
I absolutely agree. Anybody that's watched our show for any period of time know that the Dudley Boyz, I consider them the greatest tag team of all time, even better than the Road Warriors. I think the stuff that they did, Bubba Ray Dudley, at one point in the Hammerstein Ballroom, had a guy so mad at him from the crowd that he jumped off the balcony to come and try and fight him. I mean, they literally incited riots. They had to be escorted out by the police. In ECW, where everybody was, quote-unquote, a smart fan or a smart mark and knew what they were doing, they were still able to rile the fans up like that. And they had some of the most iconic moments. Obviously, they've had more tag team titles than anybody in ECW. They're the ones that broke Beulah's neck with the 3D. I mean, what can you say? They're a tag team that main evented pay-per-views. I mean, how often do you see that?
Well, I want to give them a little bit more of a rub. The reason I think they're the best tag team of all time is because, you know, the Road Warriors had their gifts in the ring and they worked together good, but these guys could talk and get you into the match. They were like in their opponent's head before the match even started, and they made the whole show. Like you said, they main evented pay-per-views, and tag teams traditionally don't do that.
No, and again, I think they're the greatest tag team of all time. That's why we put them in here. Everyone else on the list is a singles competitor except these guys, and they deserve it. I think absolutely the greatest tag team of all time, and probably the best heels in ECW consistently, because some guys were better at times, but no one for a period as long as they were. Now our number 3 guy, I'm sorry, is a guy that started off he went heel to face a few different times, and that is Sabu. And if you watch the rise and fall of ECW, Paul Heyman says that Sabu is the embodiment of what ECW was. It's a guy that was scarred up, beat up, and absolutely batshit crazy. I mean, he would do absolutely anything. Go through tables, through dump decks, through fire tables. I mean, some of the stuff that Sabu did, it was like watching a car crash happen.
You know, Sabu, don't get the credit he deserves. He does a lot of technical moves, or in his day he did a lot more technical moves than doing spots. But the thing is, he would embody the technician part and the spots
seamlessly.
Exactly. Even if he botched on a move,
he'd work it into something else.
Exactly. He would always keep going. You know, that's the one thing I always liked about Sabu. There was no really downtime in his matches.
No. And he was a multiple-time world champion. He was a focal point. He was a guy that got over in his interviews without ever saying a word in ECW. I hate Vince McMahon for making him talk. I wish that Sabu would have never said anything his whole career, but Vince made him talk in the revival of ECW. It's one of the things that pisses me off the most about the revival of ECW. I wish Sabu's character would have stayed. Everybody knows that Sabu's from Detroit or from Michigan. And the joke back in those days when he teamed with Rob Van Dam, they said he was from Bombay, Michigan.
Yeah.
Guy, like we said about Rob, he was revolutionary. He was doing stuff that no one's ever seen before. And dare to say, a lot of the stuff no one's seen since.
No. Well, we're going to go to number 2. One of my favorites, and one of the best talkers ECW has ever had, in my opinion, as far as being a heel, or sometimes even a babyface. He was a great talker. He was consistent at being that. Shane the franchise Douglas. I mean, what can you say bad about Shane Douglas? I mean, he's worked with all the greats. Even if you look before he went to ECW, he was a tag team champion with Ricky Steamboat. He learned his craft by watching others and always progressed in his skill.
Yes.
The guy was a great tactician. If you take a look back at the beginning of his career when he was one of the dynamic dudes to in 1994, when he, or was it 1994, 95?
94.
The franchise, total different character. No smiley bullshit. He was just an ass kicker and a smartass at it too. That's why I've always liked Shane Douglas. And the thing that pissed me off the most is when you talk about Vince McMahon ruining a character, is when he went to WWF at the time and became Dean Douglas and really kind of shit all over the franchise gimmick. I think if Vince was smart then, he would have kept the franchise character alive, and I think he would have had a big superstar on his hands.
Exactly. Now, Shane, the main reason he is so high is because at the time that ECW was Eastern Championship Wrestling, they held a tournament for the vacant NWA World Heavyweight Championship, which Shane won, and unbeknownst to the NWA, I think Shane, Todd Gordon, and Paul Heyman were the only people that knew. Shane grabs the NWA title, goes on one of the most epic promos ever, and basically says, you could take this belt for a dead organization.
R.I.P. 7 years ago. Sorry.
You could take this belt and shove it up your ass, because I'm not going to be the guy that stands here and represents a dead organization. I'm going to be the franchise, the man that ignites the flame of the sport of professional wrestling. It's so good that I have the whole thing memorized.
He does have it all memorized. That's like messing with him about it.
And I think if ECW was more global then, that would have been along the lines of CM Punk's Pipe Bomb, Austin 316. To me, it's right up there with those. And it changed Eastern Championship Wrestling into ECW Extreme Championship Wrestling. Now, before we get on to our number one guy, we want to quickly go through the best of the rest, the guys that for whatever reason just missed being on this list. And I'll go ahead and let you start these guys off.
Well, I'm going to start off with a tag team. I know we only have one. We have one tag team in the top 10, but we're going to have one tag team in the best of the rest. That's the Public Enemy.
What do you say? Early ECW, these guys were as big as an attraction as anybody else. Another guy, Rhino, a guy that got his start in America in ECW and was just as impactful as anybody else towards the end of ECW as a TV champion, world champion. If they would have went on, he would have been even bigger.
Tajiri, or as Jim Ross calls him, Tajiri. One of the best kicks I've ever heard in my life. This guy was he was just awesome. I always liked Tajiri.
Jerry Lynn, the antagonist for Rob Van Dam, a guy that was towards actually now it's the middle of his career, but he had already been floundering for about 10 years, had some crappy gimmicks, goes to ECW, gets a career, his career gets rejuvenated, and he's Jerry Lynn. He's a guy that everybody knows as a main event player now.
Steve Corino, you talk about main event players. Former champion, helped bring Rhino into business. What else can you say?
Now that's the best of our rest. If you guys don't like what we how we have this rated, if you think someone's up too high, someone's down too low, we missed someone altogether, let us know. Put it in our comments. Hit us up on Facebook. Put it on our Twitter. Put it down where?
Down there.
Right down there in the comments. And now I'm going to that brings us to our number one guy, the guy that I think personally was the most interesting character in the history of professional wrestling, the Raven.
What can you say? Raven got me to watch ECW. I was sitting there watching TV one day and I saw Johnny Polo dressed all grunge-like, and the guy had me captivated.
I mean, absolutely everything he did. Paul Heyman himself said this was the character he liked to write the most for because he knew that whatever he gave Raven, he was going to go and hit a home run with. The guy was absolutely amazing. He was a cult leader. I mean, he did something. He kind of he took the Kevin Sullivan for Florida Championship Wrestling, and he brought it into the 90s, added a 90s spin to it. I mean, it was awesome. I mean, he was in some of the most controversial matches in the history. I mean, he was crucifying people. He crucified the Sandman, which was a big deal at the time. He had Sandman's son turn on Sandman and join him. I mean, some of the stuff he was doing was way out there, and they let him go as far as he wanted to go. And the further he went, the more the fans loved him, or loved to hate him.
Like I said, I mean, the guy had me captivated. I enjoy, if you watch a show, I always like the smart wrestlers. I always like the guys that could beat you with their brain, not their brawn. And Raven was that guy. He wasn't a giant guy back in those days. He was probably about 230 at tops. Because he was wrestling WCW Cruiserweight division forever. And the thing is, he was a cruiserweight from before that, but he wrestled like a big guy. That's what I liked about it. He was like a pit bull going in the ring. Well, not the pit bulls, but
Yeah, I just liked everything about him. I think, like I said, to me, he is the most interesting character in the history of wrestling.
Bar none.
And basically, that's all I got to say about this list. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Gary?
Right before we go, best DDT in the business of the guys up there using them.
Raven.
All right, that's all I wanted to hear.
Even flow.
Even flow.
Got the world like butterflies. Anyway, this has been our top 10 ECW wrestlers. My name is George Coles.
Gary Rhodes.
And this is Heel Heat.